Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking at something that, honestly, just completely tears up the standard history curriculum. We've all been taught this very neat, specific little narrative about the fall of the Roman Empire, right? But what if the actual story is this epic, untold saga of survival that challenges literally everything we thought we knew? We're talking about an empire that engineered impossible weapons, built flying thrones, yes, flying thrones, and held the line against total apocalypse for a millennium.
Now, for centuries, this empire's reputation was just deliberately buried by history's supposed experts. Take the famous 18th century historian Edward Gibbon. He looked at 1,000 years of continuous, unbroken survival and called it a tedious, uniform tale of nothing but weakness and misery. Ouch. Another historian, William Lecky, even called it the most despicable form civilization had ever taken. That is just a massive, brutal insult.
Okay, let's dive into this. Were these historians just completely wrong? Is the accepted history of the Roman collapse entirely backwards? Because, it's very easy to sit comfortably centuries later and call a civilization weak. But when we actually look at the data, the engineering, and the sheer audacity of the people who lived it, well, a completely different reality emerges.
Section 1. The Thousand-Year Misconception. The Myth of Rome's End in 476 CE.
So we are absolutely going to bust the massive myth that the Roman Empire just vanished into thin air in 476 CE. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the staggering contrast between the West and the East during this time. While Western Europe was getting completely wrecked by Visigoths in 410 and carved up by barbarian kings, leaving people essentially living in mud huts with collapsed infrastructure, the lights stayed on in the East. Over in Constantinople, they took Roman law, the Roman military structure, and the Christian faith, and they just ran it all through the Greek language. And the wealth? Oh man, imagine being a foreign ambassador walking into their palace. You'd see golden lions flanking the emperor's throne that could mechanically roar, golden birds singing in a tree, and then, using 9th century hydraulics, mind you, the emperor's throne would literally physically rise into the air.
Section 2. Rome levels up, building a new empire in the East.
You see, this wasn't just about surviving a collapse. It was about building a highly advanced new empire. Mapping out this timeline reveals a total genius power move. In 330 CE, Emperor Constantine rebrands a small Greek trading town called Byzantium into Constantinople, a city sitting on literally the most valuable real estate on Earth right between Europe and Asia. When the West officially falls in 476, the East is already completely entrenched, and by 533 CE, they aren't just playing defense, they're aggressively launching a massive, systematic comeback.
Which brings us to one of the most insane military miracles in history. Under Emperor Justinian, a guy literally known as the Emperor who never sleeps, a young general in his early 30s named Belisarius is sent out to reclaim the West. Now, most generals would call his army of just 15,000 troops a complete suicide mission. But Belisarius, he just refuses to lose. He takes Carthage in a single battle. North Africa becomes Roman again, then Italy, then Rome itself. Piece by piece, with this tiny force, they electrify the world and rebuild the empire.
Section 3. Fire, Tech, and Survival. Engineering and Unbreakable Defense.
But, empires that rise fast pay a heavy price. And pretty soon they had to engineer an unbreakable defense against new, totally overwhelming threats. By the 7th century, the Arabs arrived, fresh off conquering half the known world. Constantinople really should have fallen right then, but they had a top-secret weapon, Greek fire. Historians to this day still don't know the exact recipe. Just imagine a concoction of burning oil and tar, pumped through tubes like a medieval flamethrower, blasting onto enemy fleets. In an age where every single ship was made of wood, imagine being on the receiving end of that. It was absolutely terrifying, and it held back the Arab Navy for 500 years.
And the innovations certainly didn't stop at sea. When entities tried tunneling beneath the ancient city walls, Byzantine defenders flung terracotta grenades packed with that exact same chemical fire straight down into the pitch black. Just imagine crawling underground in the dark and suddenly the ceiling explodes into flames. It's brutal. And while all this intense warfare was happening, they were also fiercely preserving knowledge. Actually, a 12th century princess named Anna Komnene skipped all the usual palace drama to dedicate her life to history. Her writing remains our primary historical source for understanding the Crusades from the Byzantine perspective today.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how technologically advanced they were. 700. That is the number of kilometers covered by a mind-blowing fire beacon telegraph system built by Leo the mathematician. It was a chain of towers stretching all across the empire.
If a border was attacked, they lit a fire, and within a single hour, using nothing but line of sight, fire, and geometry, the emperor in Constantinople knew an army was coming. That is essentially a functioning telegraph network, a full 1,000 years before the telegraph existed. No way, right?
Section 4. The Crusader Betrayal. The Enemy from Within.
As we all know, history has a way of humbling you the exact moment you think you're untouchable. The greatest threat actually didn't come from their classic enemies. In 1203, the empire makes a deadly political mistake. The son of a deposed emperor, Alexios Angelos, makes a deal with a small army of heavily armed French and Venetian crusaders. He promises them incredible riches if they help him take back his throne. Well, they do exactly that, he gets the throne, and then, he can't pay them. His own people rebelled, he gets killed, and right outside the city walls sits a massive, heavily armed, completely unpaid, and absolutely furious crusader army.
What happens next is a completely devastating turning point. These supposed Western allies turn on Constantinople. In 1204, they sack the city. They set it on fire. Centuries, literally centuries, of priceless ancient and medieval art, literature, and history are just wiped out in the flames. A full third of the population is left totally homeless. This was a catastrophic internal blow by supposed friends, and it was the one thing Byzantium never, ever fully recovered from.
Section 5. The Final Stand. The Epic Siege of 1453. 2.5 centuries later, a weakened empire faces its ultimate dramatic climax. So the crucial point is really looking at these staggering odds. Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II arrives at the city everyone thought was unbreakable. He brings an overwhelming force of 80,000 men. Inside the walls, just 8,000 Byzantine defenders. It's 10-1. The defenders have their ancient, unbreakable stone walls, sure, but Mehmed brings a level of innovation the world had never seen. Let's move to and see how this builds, because Mehmed's tactics were almost cinematic. First, he deploys the Basilic, a massive cannon capable of firing 12,200 pound balls straight through stone walls that hadn't been breached in a millennium. Next, in a single night, he pulls off the impossible. He drags 70 warships completely overland on wooden rollers, dropping them right into Constantinople's protected inner harbor. I mean, the defenders wake up to find the enemy navy inside their own waters. For nearly 2 months, they fight for every single street, using Greek fire one last time, until finally, on May 29th, the walls break.
But there's a crushing twist to this defeat. It's the ultimate irony of history. That massive empire-ending cannon, the engineer who designed it, actually brought it to the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI first. But the empire was so broke from centuries of betrayal and war, they just couldn't afford to buy it. So the engineer packed up, walked to the Ottoman camp, and sold it to the one man who would use it to end the Roman Empire forever.
Section 6. A Legacy of Resilience, Outlasting the Doubters. The city fell, yeah, but the story doesn't end there. We really have to look at what this empire actually achieved. 1,123. That is the number of years this empire survived in continuous, unbroken operation after Constantine built the city. 1,123 years. To put that in perspective, the United States hasn't even existed for 250 years. This empire outlasted the original Roman civilization that it was supposedly the decline of. It fought off the Persians, the Arabs, the Crusaders, and the Ottomans. That isn't a tedious tale of weakness. That is, for sure, one of the most staggering displays of endurance in human history. Which brings us to how we use the word today. You'll often hear things described as Byzantine when they're overly complicated, confusing, or outdated. But looking at the facts we've just covered, we need to completely redefine what that word means. To be Byzantine shouldn't mean to be confusing. It means unbreakable resilience. It means innovating when your back is against the wall, holding the line against impossible odds, and outlasting every single critic and doubter who writes you off.
So, I'll leave you with this. Knowing what you know now, that they survived an extra 1,000 years through chemical fire, underground tunnel warfare, crusader betrayal, and a siege against 80,000 men, how will you look at the so-called fall of Rome from now on? The history we're taught is often just scratching the surface. Keep digging, keep questioning the experts, and you'll find that the past is far more epic than the textbooks ever let on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.